Hello again and welcome to another episode of I Want to Talk About This Album, and you may hear some drilling noise. I'm not sure if this external mic is picking up the noise of the drill next door to me that started seconds, maybe a couple of minutes before I started doing this video. I hope it won't be disturbing to you as it is to me. So today, as you can see, I'm going to talk about the Tragically Hip. This is the first time I've ever talked about the Tragically Hip, first episode I've done on the Tragically Hip. So you know that means it's going to be a little bit of a deeper, I'm going to give a little bit of a deeper insight into my history with the Tragically Hip, in addition to talking about the album, which is called Fully Completely. And my history with Tragically Hip, it's quite long. Not really deep, but I do have a lot to say about the Tragically Hip. These guys are looking at me. I don't know if they're workers or what they're doing, but they're working hard, and they seem to be enamored with me, maybe. I'm not sure if that's the right word. So the Tragically Hip. Most of you are not going to know the Tragically Hip. They're a Canadian band, and that's why most of you don't know. I don't get too many Canadian viewers. I don't get too many American viewers, Mexican viewers, European viewers. I don't think I've ever once had one view from, Montenegro. I don't think I've ever had a view from Upper Volta, if that's still a country. I've never had a view from Myanmar. You may know it as Burma. But for those Canadians watching, hello. That might be Dallas. I'm not sure if I think he's so-so on Tragically Hip. Who else? Nate Danger from the Rock in Danger YouTube channel. I don't know if he's watching. He's Canadian. I don't know if he likes Tragically Hip. Kirk Desmond is not Canadian, but he lived in Canada. He would definitely know the Tragically Hip. So hello to the three of you and maybe 5 or 6 other stragglers who just stumble upon this video. Hello to all of you. Now, after all that fanfare, the Tragically Hip for me, I had a real kind of a love-hate, more towards hate relationship with Tragically Hip, and I will explain. I've talked about this before with other Canadian bands, probably with I Mother Earth. I did Scenery and Fish, their album, a couple years ago. I did Max Webster, A Million Vacations, maybe a year ago. I probably mentioned it then. And I'll talk about it more now because I think it applies to the Tragically Hip. I would have talked about it with Rush Moving Pictures too, but it applies more to Tragically Hip than anybody. So there used to be, or still is, a thing called CanCon, which stands for, and here's the ice cream guy. I don't know if you can pick up the Coldy is what he's pushing this cart. If there are any Mexicans watching, you know the Coldy guy. It's always an old guy, and he's pushing the cart up the hill, and he's struggling mightily. So CanCon, Canadian Content, it's this rule or law that they have in Canada that the government came up with. The idea is a way to promote and to help and support Canadian artists get played on the radio or wherever, when that used to be a big thing, Much Music, videos, things like that. So the rule is something along the lines of, I don't know the exact numbers, but the rules are something along the lines of 20%, let's say, as an example, of what gets played on the radio has to be Canadian content. That is, either the band has to be a Canadian band, I don't know what designates it as a Canadian band, or the songwriter, I think, has to be Canadian, or I'm not sure what exactly constitutes Canadian content. And in principle, I agree with it. It's a good way to promote Canadian music and Canadian bands and artists. But I felt when I was a kid, or old enough to know, and teenager, and maybe, no, for sure into my 20s, I felt it was the government or the Canadian music industry or whoever trying to convince me that crap that I wouldn't normally listen to was good. Because there was a lot of crap. For me, a lot of stuff that got played on the radio in Canada, I just didn't like it, man. Honeymoon Suite, fuck off. Platinum Blonde, same to you, buds. Maybe they're nice people. I don't mean this in a mean-spirited or a malicious way. But when I was a kid, I thought, these bands suck. Loverboy, Brighton Rock, oh my God. Peter Criss solo level crap Brighton Rock was. And even the bands that I did like, a lot of them, there was something about them. They had that Canadian something about them that prevented me from fully embracing them as I would Metallica, Kiss, Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath, things like that. And so I kind of came to resent a lot of Canadian music or Canadian bands A lot of noise today. It's usually a very quiet neighborhood. I got these guys working, although they've quieted. I got the Coldy ice cream guy, some dogs barking. So I kind of came to resent, and I just had an aversion to Canadian music. I poo-pooed Canadian music, sometimes without hearing it, sometimes, believe me, after hearing it. I really didn't like it. Tragically Hip kind of fall into that category. Now, Tragically Hip, for those who don't know, they started in their first, not album, but their first EP came out in 1987. I think it was just called The Tragically Hip. Their first full-length album, which was called Up to Here, came out in 1989. Second one was 91. That was called, what was it called? Road Apples. This one that I'm going to talk about today, and I forgot to show it fully completely. This came out in 1992. So it was their third full-length album, fourth release. As I give you my back, so rude to show my back to you. And so their first record, Up to Here, was a massive hit in Canada. There were two songs especially, Blow It High Dough and New Orleans Is Sinking. You couldn't escape those songs. It was just impossible. They were all over the radio. They were in every car. Any party you went to, any bar you went to, you would always hear those songs. There were a couple of other ones that were, I don't know if they were not quite that big, but they were big. 38 years old, Never Kissed a Girl. What else was on the first record? I don't remember, but I bought that at the time. I thought, okay, this is okay music. And Tragically Hip, their music, for those who don't know, it's not typically the kind of music that I particularly enjoy, especially at the time when I was a big hard rock and metal and thrash metal guy. Still am. I'm a little bit more open-minded now. But back then, Tragically Hip, they were pretty good. They were just, and still are, or were, they're finished now. I'll talk about that. They were a rock band. They were in the vein of, let's say, REM, Pearl Jam, I think were good comparisons. Especially REM, I would say. They don't sound like REM. They don't sound like Pearl Jam. But definitely not metal. Maybe not even as rock as Pearl Jam. Here they go again with their drilling. And that music wasn't really for me. But I did like New Orleans Is Sinking and Blow It High Dough. And I bought that record. But then the bigger they became and the more I heard those songs, I just grew to think of it as Canadian crap, especially because I was 19 when that album, Up to Here, came out in 1989. And I used to go to bars a lot. I spent a lot of time at bars when I was 19, 20, 21, 22. Went to bars a lot. And as I mentioned, every bar would play Blow It High Dough and New Orleans Is Sinking and maybe a couple of other songs from Up to Here. And I kind of started to associate that with a lot of the drunk idiots that go to bars, kind of like a Canadian redneck national anthem, you know, and the woo girls that woo, Tragically Hip, things like that. Although I think Tragically Hip were drew a predominantly male crowd. And so I just got really tired of them. I never did buy the second record, which was Road Apples, but I did buy the third one, Fully Completely, which I'm going to talk about today. Never really got into it aside from a few songs, and I do need notes of this today. I kind of struggled whether I should take notes or not, because I'm familiar with it enough that I thought I can do it at least half of it, because this song was massive. I think this is I think it's diamond certification in Canada. It probably didn't even, I don't think, there's no way it went gold even in the United States, and I don't know if anybody else outside of Canada even heard Tragically Hip, including this, Fully Completely. But in Canada, massive, massive success. I would say at least diamond. Their next record, which was Day for Night, maybe it was even bigger. No, I think Tragically, Fully Completely, I think was the bigger album commercially anyway. So I did take notes on it there again with their drills. And that I'm all distracted by all these ice cream guys and workers, and my neighbor was out just before I started. If you saw in the last video, my neighbor, a guy was out there shirtless behind me on his rooftop. And I just thought of something else I was going to say about Tragically Hip. What was it? I can't remember. And it likely was not important. So it's, kind of a mixed bag for me. In retrospect, I do love Tragically Hip now. Now, a little bit more about Tragically Hip, their history, not my history with them. I guess part of, well, no, I will do a little bit more of my history. Living in Mexico now for 19 years, it's no wonder nobody watches my videos. No repeat viewers anyway. Thank you to those who do. Being away from Canada for 19 years now and not having these songs shoved down my throat, as Dice Clay would say, and having some space and some freedom, you could apply that to people, relationships, family, jobs, whatever. Sometimes you need a break and you need to create some distance and you appreciate something more. And so living away from Canada, living in Mexico for 19 years and not having these songs surrounding me all the time, I have a much, much greater appreciation for them. I love this album now. Love it. Way, way more than I did in 1992 when it came out. And Tragically Hip as a band, I really like them more. They ended their career, and oh, I know what I was going to say about Tragically Hip. They are objectively, this is not my opinion, I'm sure most people who know would agree, they are the greatest Canadian band ever. The biggest, the greatest, the most highly acclaimed, most successful. Not Rush. You may know Rush. Tragically Hip. Rush is not on the same level as Tragically Hip. Rush is obviously much, much bigger internationally, but within Canada, Tragically Hip makes Rush look like a little dot on the Canadian music industry. That's not exactly true, but really, it's not even up for debate. Your personal opinion, my personal opinion. I like I Mother Earth more than I like Tragically Hip, but nobody, including Rush, comes close to the level of acclaim, success. What's the word I'm looking for? Canadians love Tragically Hip because they sing about Canada. I think that's a reason why they were not popular, especially in the United States or more internationally. People don't like, I think, hearing... It's like so many Tragically Hip songs are almost like mini Canadian history lessons. And including a couple, including my favorite one on this album, either mentions of Canada or things that happen in Canada, Canadian figures, politics, geography, all kinds of things. And if you're American especially, they're very myopic Americans. They don't care about that. And I understand that. I don't want to hear about you know, I don't know, German history. Wow, that's maybe a little bit more interesting. But yeah, Tragically Hip, they ended their career. The singer Gord Downie, he was diagnosed in, I think it was 2015, around there, with a brain cancer, inoperable. Pretty much that was the end of his life. He was diagnosed, and they said Gord Downie has this brain cancer. He's dying. The band is over, but we're going to do one last tour. They never actually said a last tour, I don't think. It was never billed in a very Canadian manner. It was never billed as a farewell tour, although everybody knew it was. They played across Canada from sea to shining sea, from Vancouver or Victoria, all the way, I think, to Newfoundland in the east, and they came back and they ended their career in Kingston, Ontario, a couple of hours outside of Toronto. They played multiple nights in arenas for sure in Toronto at the Air Canada Centre, Vancouver at the Rogers Arena too. They played multiple nights. They could play. They're kind of like Prince in that they could be a huge band if they wanted to, or they could pull back the reins and just play in clubs or theaters. I don't think their popularity was ever in question, but their choices of venues, however they wanted to present themselves, was I think that was really cool. So they they played their last concert in August 16 or 17? And Gord Downie died, I think about a year later. It was October. I think it was October 20th, I think was the day that Gord Downie died, a year after, whenever their last concert was. And that was it. Tragically Hip was never to be heard of again. Kind of. They had a few, there was an Amazon series on them last year I think it was, called No Dress Rehearsal, which is a lyric from Ahead by a Century, which was on Trouble at the Hen House album. I never had that one. And there was a great documentary, amazing. God, I should have been more prepared to talk about this. There was a documentary that came out maybe 2 or 3 years ago, just a standalone documentary movie about 2 hours called Long Time Running, which is named after a song on, I think that's on Day for Night, which is my second favorite, maybe my favorite Tragically Hip album. That is one of the greatest rock music documentaries I've ever seen. If you don't like Tragically Hip, it's one of these ones that even if you don't like the band or not interested or don't know anything about the band, I think anybody would enjoy. If you like music, you should watch Long Time Running, the Tragically Hip documentary. It documents Gord Downie, the singer Gord Downie's his from his diagnosis with the brain cancer to he had to spend to, you know, they knew they were going to do one more tour. He had to learn all the lyrics again. He lost pretty much all his memory, and he struggled. It's kind of difficult to watch him in very frail health and poor condition, and you know, he had to learn to sing. He also had to remember all the lyrics. It documents that whole process and the tour and everything. Fantastic, amazing. There was also a book, and I meant to bring the book with me, called, what was the book called? Can't remember, but I bought that book in Canada when I was there in 2019. Read it. Again, one of my favorite rock books ever. I've read quite a few rock books, and that one was really, really good. So that is my my Tragically Hip story. And I never saw them live, which obviously I regret now. But as I said at the time, I was they were a little bit of the enemy to me, and I just wasn't interested. I really, really regret that now. See bands when you have the chance, because you never know when. And I also had a chance to see Mother Love Bone in 1989 or early 1990, obviously before Andrew Wood died. Missed it, regret that. So I miss not seeing the Tragically Hip. All right, so I will talk now about Fully Completely. Here it is. There's the album cover, and it's a single album, but it's a very cool gatefold with the lyrics and everything. And it does come with a, if you like this kind of thing, whoops, hard time getting this out. Oh, it's really stuck in there. It comes with a poster. This is what the poster looks like. Is it exactly the album cover? No, I don't think it's not exactly the album cover, but kind of an abstraction of it, or a different version of the album cover. There it is on very, very heavy, nice, thick, high quality paper. Maybe it is the album cover. I don't know. So I will put this back, and then I will talk about Tragically Hip, Fully Completely. I feel a little bit, I think, self-conscious being on the roof, being on display, and you know, everybody sees me, and there's the record. It's just a regular black vinyl, and God, I hate this. When I've talked about this before, when the seams of these inner sleeves get split from, I guess, from sliding around in the jacket, I find that very bothersome. I have a friend called Jason Satterfield who would, I think he'd like to file a lawsuit against record companies who, he's more of a CD guy, much more of a CD guy, who don't, you know, provide good packaging. All right, so I can put that down, and I will use my notes for the Tragically Hip, Fully Completely, which came out in 1992. The first song is called Courage, and then it's in parentheses. I wouldn't say it's a subtitle, but it's kind of dedicated to, in parentheses, it says, for Hugh McLennan. And I think most Canadians were like me, not that I'm speaking for most Canadians, had no idea who the fuck Hugh McLennan was until the song came out. And I've come to learn that he is a Canadian author in the 50s or 60s, something like that. Couldn't tell you anything about him. Don't know the name of any of his books. But this song was dedicated to him. It's, I think, quite different from the rest of the album. And oh my God, this album had, I don't know how many singles or videos were released from this album, but a lot of them, there was a lot of them, at least 4, maybe 5 or 6, 7, that were on the radio constantly. I don't know if they all had videos, but Courage was all over the radio. I don't know if I remember a video for Courage, but I love it. It's quite different from the rest of the albums. Tragically Hip have a little bit of a sometimes kind of a somber sound to them, a little bit of a downer sound, kind of a dark sound. some exceptions, like Ahead by a Century, which I mentioned earlier. And this is another one, Courage. It's very kind of a, I would stop short of saying it's a happy song, but it's kind of bouncy, upbeat, maybe kind of cheerful. Yeah, and it's a great song, very, very catchy. Didn't Come, It Doesn't Matter. Courage, my word. I love Courage. It's a fantastic song. Next is Looking for a Place to Happen. I think this was also, I don't know if it was an official single, but I do remember this on the radio. It wasn't as big as some of the other ones, but I do remember Looking for a Place to Happen, making stops along the way. That wasn't the subtitle, that was just in the chorus. Looking for a place to happen, making stops along the way. The riff, the opening riff, or the main riff of this song sounds similar to a song I'm going to talk about later on Fully Completely. And in this song also, as I mentioned, the Canadian, they mentioned in this song, I don't remember the context of it, but they mentioned Jacques Cartier. And I should know, as a Canadian, I should know more about Jacques Cartier, but I don't. I lived in Montreal when I was a kid, lived there for 10 years, and there was a bridge that connected Montreal to the Montreal Island, and it was called the Jacques Cartier Bridge. As far as I can remember, it's obviously much more than this, but I think Jacques Cartier, he's considered like not the founder of Canada. He might be the guy who gave it the name. He was French, from France, and he, I think, was one of the first people to come over. And basically, it's like this might not be correct. I think he basically discovered Canada. He might have been the one who named it Canada. Very important person in Canadian history that I know very little about. Shame on me, Jacques Cartier. Next is At the 100th Meridian. This was definitely on the radio a lot in 1992, 93. This has a great kind of a chicka chicka wow, like that sounds like porn or something, like a chicka chicka wah guitar kind of throughout. I think especially the first verse, I think, which I think is maybe provided by two guitars, Rob Baker and Paul Langlois. I'm not sure who plays that, but we'll go with Rob Baker. And yeah, at the 100th Meridian is great. Meridian, which again references, and again, I should know about this. The 100th Meridian is, I think it's based on the lyrics and my minuscule knowledge of my own home country. The 100th Meridian is where the Great Plains begin. You have, I guess, Maritime Canada, Eastern, I guess, Central Canada, and Western Canada. And the 100th Meridian, I think, is where Eastern Canada meets Central Canada, something like that. And it's an excellent song, At the 100th Meridian. I like that way more than I did back in the day. And did I mention they mentioned Ry Cooder in this? Gord Downey sings, I'll get Ry Cooder to sing my eulogy. I don't know if Ry Cooder ever, I think when Gord Downey died, I don't know if Ry Cooder ever did his eulogy, probably not, but I don't even know if Ry Cooder is still alive. I think he is. Next is Pigeon Camera. Good song, nothing really to say about it, but I do like Pigeon Camera. It's kind of one of the, maybe kind of a forgotten song, one of the few that wasn't played on the radio, I think. Next is Lionized. This, I think, was also not a single. I don't remember it on the radio at any time. Interesting, the opening lyric is cold wind blowing across your private parts. It's got a great riff kind of driving this song, and it's an excellent song, Lionized. Next is Locked in the Trunk of a Car. Every day I'm dumping the body, kind of a serial killer type song. You're locked in the trunk of a car. It's, I don't know if this song, I mean, the lyrics I'm not familiar enough with to know if it was written like from the point of view from of a killer. But, and I think Gord Downey was famous in, I think I remember reading this in that book that I mentioned earlier that I forgot to bring up with me. I think it's mentioned in that book that the Gord Downey never, or very, very rarely, wrote songs from his perspective. There was never I in the songs, or me. It was always through somebody else's eyes, which I never noticed that. I'm not familiar enough with Tragically Hip lyrics. And they have several albums that I've never even heard since I moved away from Canada. But yeah, Locked in the Trunk of a Car is, it's an excellent song. I love it. Oh, and it also reminds me of Slayer, Dead Skin Mask, only for the fact that, you know, at the end of Slayer, Dead Skin Mask, It's somebody saying, it's kind of like a voiceover. It's not Tom Araya. Somebody who has been, I guess, imprisoned by a serial killer, by the person in the song. In that case, it was Ed Gein, and the voice is saying, "Let me out of here, Mr. Gein. This isn't funny anymore, Mr. Gein. Let me out of here. Let me out now." And in this, at the end, Gord Downie is saying, same thing, "Let me out." And MOD had a song called "Let Me Out." Totally unrelated. Next is "We'll Go To." This is another one that I kind of had forgotten about. Pigeon Camera, Lina's "We'll Go To," because they weren't on the radio. This is kind of a strange song. I really like it. And I can't explain this, I think, very well, but it's like the drums and the music, and I've talked about this with a few other songs, the drums and the music are kind of fighting each other. They just don't match. And I mean that in a good way, but it's just like the drums are going this way and the music is going this way, and they don't agree, but it sounds excellent. I got to go to my second page here. Okay, that was number 7. Number 8 is the title track, Fully Completely. Great vocals on this. It's kind of an intense song, kind of intense vocals. And Gord Downie could be very intense, especially if you go back and watch some performances of Grace 2 from the last tour especially. Very intense guy. He would really kind of, it's like the Robert De Niro of music. He would really, really get into character when he sang some of these songs. Next is, oh, something going on. I don't know if the camera can see my neighbor's door. Next is 50 Mission Cap. First of all, I'll say about this one, I wish Mike Pratt were watching. I know he's not, but he should listen to this, and maybe Rat Rock too. My good friend Pete, who I've talked about, I feel like in almost every episode I mention him, he pointed out, and I had never noticed this until he pointed out, that the riff of 50 Mission Cap, which is one of my, maybe my second favorite on Fully Completely. I haven't got to my favorite yet. The riff of 50 Mission Cap is quite reminiscent of Wanted Man by Rat. And I never noticed that before. He pointed out long time after the album was out. I thought, oh my God, how could I not notice that? And every time I've heard it since then, for the last 37 years, 33 years, however long it's been, I always think of Wanted Man. So this is a real Canadian song. This is about a guy called Bill Barilko, who and I think most people, maybe older people, have never heard of this guy. He was a hockey player. Big surprise, as I said, Tragically Hip, or Gord Downie wrote a lot of songs about Canadian and Canadian culture and things like that, hockey. They had a song called Fireworks. It was a total hockey song about the 1972 Summit Series. So Bill Barilko was a guy who played for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And this is a true story. He scored the winning goal in the Stanley Cup Finals that won the Leafs the cup. That's the actual lyric in the song. Bill Barilko, the lyrics are, Bill Barilko disappeared that summer. He was on a fishing trip. He was on a fishing. The last goal he ever scored won the Leafs the cup. They didn't win another till 1962, the year he was discovered. That's pretty much the whole story there. So this guy, Bill Barilko, he scored the game-winning goal in overtime to win the Stanley Cup for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Shortly after, later that summer, he went on a fishing trip with a friend. I don't know his friend's name, but I remember he was a dentist. That's all I know. And they went somewhere up in northern Ontario where there's nothing around. And, I guess like a small plane, like a 2-seater plane or something, 3-seater, a small plane. And it just disappeared. Nobody knew anything what happened to them. They were never found until 1962, which I think was 10 years later. And they finally found the plane, the wreckage of the plane in 1962, and then they won the Stanley Cup that year again. So the song is about him. And it's also kind of about, the song is called 50 Mission Cap, which references, I think it was World War II pilots. I don't know if it was just Canadian pilots or everybody. I have a feeling it was not just Canadian. It was more World War II pilots in general. If they flew 50 missions during the war, they got a special cap. And that's what this song is about. And the lyrics are, he sings about what happened in the song with Bill Barilko. One of the lines is, I stole this from a hockey card. He got the information from a hockey card about Bill Barilko, what happened to him maybe he didn't know about. Gord Downey didn't know about it, and he got the information from a hockey card. And the lyric is, I stole this from a hockey card I keep tucked up under my 50 mission cap. And I think the thing was rookie pilots would make the hat more. What's the other line in the song? It's about wearing the cap in, like making it look more worn, to make pilots, younger pilots or inexperienced pilots, look like they had more experience than they did by working in their 50 mission cap. That is a great, great song. Next is, oh my God, Wheat Kings is next. I'm going to have to take a couple of minutes just for this song. This is for sure my favorite song on this album, Fully Completely. It's this or a song called Grace 2, which is the first song on their following album called Day for Night, which came out in 1994, are my two favorite Tragically Hip songs. This song is pure Canadian, very kind of happy and sad. It has a very somber feeling to it. And I'll try to explain the story as best I can. There's a guy called David Milgaard in the late 60s, early 70s. He was from Winnipeg, I think. And in the late 60s, early 70s, he was arrested and accused of murdering a woman, I think in Saskatoon. And he was arrested for it. He went to jail for it. And as it turned out, he didn't do it. And I remember this was a big story. Around 88 or 89, 90, around there was when he was exonerated. And he was completely exonerated. This is not like some bullshit like Bill Cosby, going to jail and, clearly guilty, but got released from jail and was a free man. I think it was due to a technicality. David Milgaard was not like that. He was released because they found, I think it was DNA evidence, that he clearly, and he maintained his innocence he was in jail for 23 years and maintained his innocence all along. And I guess thankfully, I don't know, this is, I guess, a very hot topic. Maybe a good reason why the death penalty should not exist for things like that, because if he had been put to death, they would have been putting an innocent man to death. And Gord Downey wrote about this. And I remember this happening in 88, 89, 90, around there. I was a teenager, 18, 19, around there. And I remember it being big news at the time. I remember the fact that he was exonerated and set free was massive news, because when he went to jail, I was like 1 or 2 years old, and probably didn't really hear about him until he was exonerated and released from jail 23 years later. And horrible blemish on Canada's history. I wish I knew more about that story, because it is very interesting and something that should never happen in a country like Canada, or hopefully shouldn't happen anywhere, but especially in a country like Canada or the United States, although I think that's more likely to happen in the United States these days. And by these days, I mean these years, maybe longer. But very bad look for Canada that they put him in jail. Very sensitive. I think it's too dramatic to say gut-wrenching lyrics, but very sad lyrics. It's sundown in the Paris of the prairies. We kings have all treasures buried. All you have are the rusty breezes pushing around the weather-vane Jesus. And I guess the songs are more directly about David Milgaard. He sees the killer, the Zippo lighter. In the Zippo lighter, he sees the killer's face. The Zippo lighter sees the killer. What else is it? I got to get this right. And he died a few years ago, David Milgaard. No, I can do this without the lyrics. I guess it was this song, or the lyrically, it was maybe kind of about, my interpretation is it was kind of some indifference that Canadians had towards the story at the time in the early 70s. They just thought, oh, he's guilty, put him in jail. As a lot of Americans like to say, lock her up, lock him up, whoever it is, without any kind of trial or justice. They just say, oh, put him in jail. And my interpretation of the lyrics is that this was how Gord Downey saw that Canadians were viewing David Milgaard, that when he went to jail, they didn't care about him. And what's the lyric that says that? Yeah, I got to get this right. 20 years for nothing. Well, that's nothing new because no one's interested in something you didn't do. So I think to me, it's like he's saying, oh, you didn't do it? We don't care about that. We only care about if you did do it. I think kind of like a bloodthirsty mob mentality. And then in the end of the song, late breaking story on the CBC. CBC is the national network of Canada. Late breaking story on the CBC. A nation whispers, we always knew he'd go free. I don't know if that's like the hypocrisy of saying, like people were ashamed. Oh, we always knew he didn't do it. We knew he'd go free, but we didn't say anything at the time. Late breaking story on the CBC. A nation whispers, we always knew that he'd be free. They say you can't be fond of living in the past, because if you are, then there's no way that you're going to last. And some very Canadian references in here too. There's a dream. There's a dream where the high school is dead and stark. It's a museum, and we're all locked up in it after dark. The walls are lined. The walls are lined, all yellow, gray, and sinister, hung with pictures of our parents' prime ministers. Very, very Canadian subject matter in that song. I would even say one of my favorite songs ever. I know that's very dramatic and that's a big thing to say, but it's very, probably if you're not Canadian or if you're not of a certain age, or if you don't know the story, you probably think, oh yeah, good song. But for me, especially now as an adult, I appreciate the story behind it and what David Milgaard suffered through. 23 years in jail for a crime he didn't commit. They did, I think, end up finding the real killer through whatever it was that ended up exonerating him. I think it was DNA. They did then find the killer, and he was in jail. And Milgaard got, he became rich. He was compensated for the 23 years he was in jail. I have no idea how much it was, but I remember it kind of being controversial. There was a pretty paltry sum. He was rich. He was set for life, but I think the general consensus was he was owed a lot more than he got. I don't know if he was happy with his settlement, whatever he got, or if he wanted more. But yeah, very, very sad story about David Milgaard. And Wheat Kings is fucking awesome. Everybody should go listen to that song. It's unbelievable. Next is we got a couple more here. Oh, and also one more thing about Wheat Kings at the beginning, and this was either mentioned in the book or the documentary, something, or maybe I just read it somewhere. At the beginning of Wheat Kings, there's a call of a bird. It's I don't know if it's a duck or a mallard or possibly a loon, but you hear this the sound that these birds make, right? And the guy, apparently that was taken from, I think the Tragically Hip got sued over this. They had taken that from some kind of documentary, nature documentary, something like that. And the guy who did the documentary, he said he identified it right away. When he heard the song, he said, they stole that from me. And he was right, they did. And I think Tragically had to, I guess they had to pay him. And I think this was years after. So a little bit of trivia about Wheat Kings. Next is The Wherewithal. This is a great song. This is one of another one that I had kind of forgotten about, that I never really get into. This is the closest thing to a real kind of hard rock song. Kind of a real riff-driven song. I feel like it's not a metal song. To be clear, it's not a metal song, but I feel like a metal band could do a cover of The Wherewithal. It's excellent. And then the last song is called El Dorado. What's the funny lyric? Just the mention of Berlin makes me sexy. Smells like coffee. These great lines. I don't know what that means, but yeah, El Dorado is an excellent song too. I like every song on this record. It was my ignorance and my attitude towards Canadian CanCon propaganda that I think held me back from really loving this record, but I do love it now. It's excellent. All right, that is all. Thank you for watching this little, this episode and this little history lesson about this band and their album. The band is called The Tragically Hip, and the album, as you can see right here, is called Fully Completely. See ya.